Segon. Tehota'kerá ni waksanodang Jeremy Green yung gets. Kentyohkwa waga tahiwani dana go tege ni de wageno. Nuknua o swegon gidero. Dana wagarong ka. So my name is Jeremy Green. I grew up on the Tehota'kerá Mohawk territory. I now live the Six Nations Grand River country, Mohawk Nation Wolf Clan. When I was 4 years old, my grandma Loft had this house on the hill, and we would go visit with my mother. And her dad lived in Oshawa, and they left Tehota'kerá in the 1940s to go work at the GM plant in Oshawa, Ontario, which was not uncommon at the time. Now, both of my grandmother's parents spoke Mohawk, and my grandmother was a non-speaker. And I remember being taken there to my grandmother's house, and my grandma would say, "Hey, your great-grandfather is here. My dad, Henry Hill. I want you to meet him." And I looked up the stairs. There was a man sitting on the couch. He had a cane, and he was sitting like this. He had a fedora on, the old horn-rimmed glasses, and he had his yellow sweater vest on. And he started talking to me, and I didn't know what he was saying. He came down to visit again a time later, and I remember my grandmother said, "Go up and speak Mohawk with my dad. He wants to talk to you." So I went upstairs and I sat down. He puts me on his lap, and but he's not telling me stories this time. He's more like he's telling me something. I don't know what it was. He passes away shortly after that, right? So I think I was about 9 years old, and I went to sleep. I had a dream. And in my dream, someone was calling me. They were saying, "Jeremy, Jeremy." In my dream, I was in bed, and I opened my eyes, and I sat up, and I looked out my doorway. And then he was standing there. And he was just smiling. And he starts talking to me again in Mohawk. But this time I knew what it was. And so it wasn't at that time I decided I'm going to learn to speak Mohawk. We were going to Longhouse in Ganyangé. Tehota'kerá never had a Longhouse, so we used to travel. We'd go to ceremonies. Everything was all in Mohawk. So Dorothy Lazor from Onkwawen moves to Tehota'kerá, and she's going to help us with our language. And she says, "You're really good at picking up the language. Do you want to learn this speech?" I said, "Well, what is it?" She said, "Well, you'll open and close all the meetings. Whenever people gather, you're going to say this speech." And I said, "I can try." I was petrified to speak in front of a crowd of people. And I had the Mohawk written on one line, and underneath was the English. So I started learning it. I went back to Longhouse, and then that was what the speech that they said. And I had grown up hunting, fishing, cutting wood. Father taught me all these different things. And in that Thanksgiving address, which is what they wanted me to learn, they're saying, "Now we give thanks to the animals that are still running about, and from time to time we cause them to fall, and we acquire their meat, and it puts peace in our minds that we still see them." And it just made instant sense to me. Boom. And after that, it was like, okay, I'm going to become a speaker of the language. And so I went back to Six Nations, and then I met my wife. I ended up staying there. And I was an Ontario trained teacher, university degrees, and they wanted me to teach in their immersion schools right away. So I worked with a native speaker, as my EA, and she was awesome. We would stand at the front of the school, the gang of us Mohawk immersion teachers, and she's telling stories. And they're like right dirty stories. You would not think a 75-year-old woman is going to be telling these stories in front of the kids. And then one day I looked at her and I said, "Mine is already hooked on." You know? And she's like, "Why?" And she said, "In Mohawk, no one understands what I'm saying anyway." And she just laughed. So every day she would tell these crazy stories at the front of the school, and I think, we can speak our language anywhere.